If you've ever made a decision and ignored your gut, and then sometime in the future looked back and realized that your gut was right, this episode is for you. 92% of entrepreneurs admit to ignoring their intuition on major business decisions, and 87% of them say that it costs them more than money, because your gut instinct isn't just a feeling, it's your most powerful and, in my opinion, your most ignored business asset. So welcome back to the Mind of George Show. It's a show for entrepreneurs who know that scaling their business isn't just about strategies and tactics. It's about doing it your way, in alignment with the best practices, walking away from outdated business models or copy and paste tactics, and using messaging that actually resonates and aligns with you and your audience so that you can scale with impact. And today I dive in, because this conversation is so prevalent, into the hidden cost of ignoring your intuition in business. And I have the utmost pleasure of coaching many people and having sometimes 50 conversations a week. And our gut instinct is the missing piece to most people's businesses. And we're taught to rely on data over instinct, but it's actually the blend of the both that make it so powerful. And when we end up ignoring it, it ends up costing us more than we realize. So in the episode, I break down the 3 major warning signs that you're ignoring your intuition, why data alone leads to hollow success and burnout, how to strengthen that intuition muscle for better business decisions with tangible, practical things to start doing today, the real reason most entrepreneurs end up in what we call the golden prison, and practical ways where you can use data and your intuition so that you can have aligned growth. And so I'm really excited to share. So let's dive into the show. So I have an important question for you. Have you ever had a gut feeling about a decision where maybe your head was saying yes, your thoughts were saying yes, your outside friends or the things you were consuming were saying yes, but your gut was saying no? Like there was this knowing in your gut that was a no, and you ignored it. And after you made that decision, you ended up regretting it later. That word is a word that's thrown around in entrepreneurship all the time, but that word is called intuition. And intuition is one of the most profound and powerful business tools, and it's not just this woo-woo idea. Intuition is your inner knowing. It's your gut reality. It's the undertone of you being in alignment. And I can think of 15 circumstances or situations in the last year alone where I had nothing but data or analytics or statistics to say, hey, that is the right thing to do. But there was this piece in my belly and in my heart that was like, no, it's not. And this is so important, and it's not talked about enough. I have friends who I love who teach this, but it's not the popular concept, because everybody wants a strategy, a framework, an answer, a thing to follow. But in entrepreneurship, we are taught over and over and over to rely on logic, on data, on strategy. But in my honest opinion, and with my personal experience, and for those people that I coach, I can confidently say that I have a belief that intuition is the missing piece for aligned decision making. What do I mean by aligned decision making? I mean the moments in business, the way we do business, the way we market ourselves, the way we communicate, the way that we coach clients, the way that we structure offers. We do it in a way that doesn't drain our energy, but makes us excited to wake up for work that day. That when we put our head on the pillows, we have nothing but gratitude. It doesn't advocate the hard work. It doesn't advocate the days where sometimes we're grinding and other days where we're coasting. But what it eliminates is the transactional approach that leaves us feeling empty on the inside, or having a hollow soul, or even worse, resenting our business. And I've learned this through watching so many of my friends, so many of my mentors, so many of the people that I look up to and admire. The number one common thing that every successful person that I know has in common is they trust their instincts. They don't throw data in the trash, but they use data on top of their instincts, because data can only tell them so much. And this conversation has been coming up a ton in coaching conversations with clients of mine, with business partners of mine who are coaching people, because the noise in the world is getting really, really loud. And everyone's starting to realize that all these copy and paste templates and all these frameworks, that I love frameworks, but copying and paste them, or doing business because somebody told me to do it that way, or looking at somebody's outside business and trying to replicate it without knowing the inner workings of it, are costing them their happiness, their time, their money, their energy. And so I wanted to really, really dive into this today. And I wanted to give you some practical ways to tap into your intuition and avoid the costly mistakes that come from it. And if you're also looking out the window because you're watching this, it is somehow summer in Montana already. My Canadian people, it's like 10 or 11, and Fahrenheit people somewhere between like 45 and 55. But I'm kind of like shocked right now as I just saw the sunshine peeking behind me, and that's my neurodivergent squirrel brain over here. Okay, so I want to talk about what happens when you ignore your intuition, because there are telltale signs, and this is a conversation that comes up with me all the time. People want to scale their business. They want to scale their business. They want to scale their business. But all too often they end up making mistakes because they haven't pressure tested, or they don't know what it's going to cost, or what habits and behaviors they're going to have to follow. And I watch people scale themselves out of business because they ignore the signs of their intuition, and it costs them alignment. And so what ends up happening? What does it look like? Some of the telltale signs is we end up in over analysis, right? We will have a piece of clarity and we're like, oh, I want to try that. But instead of trying it, we ruminate, we data collect, we spend days, weeks, months looking for evidence to support that decision. And we're constantly and consistently second guessing our decisions. And I love this book from Elizabeth Gilbert called Big Magic. And I think Rick Rubin talked about it in his book on creativity, that when an idea sparks and our body is a yes, but we delay the implementation, that idea leaves and go to somebody else. We miss the mark. And when you're operating in alignment, when you know how you operate, where you spend your time, how you want to spend it, and an idea comes up, it gives us the ability to act on it quickly. And so one sign that you're operating out of alignment is this overanalyzation of decisions, or a whole lot of doubt and second guessing. Another tangible one, and this is the one that I see the absolute most, feeling quote unquote off about a hire, about an investment, about a partnership, about a collaboration, about a podcast guest, about a conversation with a coaching client. And even though there's red flags being alarmed in our body, we ignore them and we move forward anyways. And the third one is how I would summarize this all together. All the self-sacrificial times we say yes, when everything in us is screaming to say no. I can think of moments in my life right now where I'm traveling with my son and I get invited to a business dinner. And I'm in this analyzation bucket of like, holy moly, there's potential business partners at this dinner. There's potential clients at this dinner. What if I go to this dinner and they give me a keynote? What if I can have them on my podcast? What if I can do A? What if I can do B? But yet my heart is like, I'm with my son. I actually want to spend the night with my son. I want to hang out with him. And so my whole body is saying no to that dinner. My heart is saying yes to my son. And I've been in that rumination bucket, and I hate to admit this, but one too many times early on in my career, I chose the dinner over my son. And when I go back through those moments of those dinners, did I make friends? Yes. Did I make acquaintances? Yes. Did I accomplish anything that could have replaced that time with my son? No. And so the third mistake is saying yes when everything in us wants to say no, because we're ignoring that intuition in our body. And when we ignore that intuition, it costs us a lot. And the costs tend to stack, and they tend to get really, really deep and really, really sticky. And I think, what is it? The bias, the psychological bias, is called the sunk cost bias, to where we end up looking back and wasting time and money and energy on all the wrong things. We execute a strategy because somebody convinced us it was the best way to execute it, even though our heart said, but if I do it my way, it's going to feel better. And because they told us, we keep executing it and executing it and executing it, expecting it to work. But the only thing that it costs us is more time, more money, and more energy. Or we end up working with the wrong person. We have the wrong business partner. We have the wrong client. And we start trading our values in exchange for that yes because of fear, not recognizing that that's blocking the right thing from coming in. Or we sell an offer And we started with an offer. And we had that offer selling. And because we've been selling it for 18 months, we forget that we've grown as a person. We might have learned things. We've gotten feedback. We've adjusted. We didn't like how the results were coming in, but we have that sunk cost bias of like, I have to keep selling it. I have to keep selling it. I have to keep selling it. Instead of taking a step back and making an adjustment and bringing it into alignment with us. And what that leads to in business is you have every marker on the outside that might look successful. You might have the clients, the consistent cash flow, the consistent marketing that works. But every single moment you think about the business, every single moment you step into the business, it feels draining. It feels exhausting. You're not lit up. You're not excited. You're not fired up. And think of everything that I'm talking about today. That's the one that's hurt me the most for the longest. Not anymore. I love what I do. I literally get sad when I don't have standing client calls. I get sad when I don't have podcasts. I get sad when I can't run our events, which, side note, if you have not gotten your ticket to the event, we have a couple of tickets left. It's April 10th through 12th in Montana and 13th for the VIPs, where we get to throw all the outdating business models in the trash and we get to throw out all the copy and paste tactics and build messaging that works and have the mindset to scale and have customer journeys to retain our customers and bring in more. And so I'm really, really stoked. And if you happen to be listening to this after April or March of 2025, just go to mindofgeorge.com/event and sign up for the waiting list. And then we'll notify you of the next one when we plan one, because we do one at a time. But I think of all the conversations, this is the one that's landed the most. And I remember a time where I had everything on paper, houses, cars, cash flow, but I genuinely was depressed. And the way that I would describe it is I was a slave to the business. It was like I lived in this golden prison that everybody was like, oh, it's so beautiful, but I was trapping myself on the inside. And the collateral damage caused by that took years to clean up. Broken relationships, messes, cash flow, debt. Because deep down, I knew better, but I was too afraid to listen to my gut. And I just expected somebody else to come fix it for me, or somebody else to come shift it for me, or somebody else to come build it for me. And I even have a story in mind right now with a private client who I love dearly, who I help scale. And they came to me and they're like, I want to build this $10 million business. And I was like, okay. And they were already crushing. They were doing, multiple seven figures. And we went through this entire pressure test of like, this is what it's going to look like. This is what your calendar is going to look like. This is where you're going to end up. And they were like, yes, yes, yes. And then after doing it, they realized that they didn't want the lifestyle that came with it. They didn't want to become the person that had it. And they shared with me after, they're like, I did have this like gut knowing, and they ended up being able to recover and shift it. But I run into these moments over and over. And I have another client who I love dearly right now. And my favorite thing is every single time we have a call every week, she's like, I love that we're doing this my way. It feels so good. I feel so excited to wake up. I feel so excited to serve in a way that supports me, to have structures that support me, to have a customer journey that feels like me. And we end up costing ourselves all of these things that we truly want because we don't listen to our intuition. And when you really get into intuition, it's this term that's thrown around. It's quote unquote woo woo. It's thrown around in the world. And really it's this powerful, powerful tool. It's this inner knowing. And one of the things that I believe, and I got this from my best friend, TJ, and I love him to pieces for this because he's an incredible mindset coach and NLP coach. And if you haven't listened to his episode on the show, I would highly recommend listening to it. He has this philosophy, which I love. And he says, as a coach, I will never know the answer as well as my client's inner guidance or intuition does. Just like I will never know what brings you the most alignment. I can't read your gut signals. I can't understand those intuitive hits. Only you can. But with the right facilitation, with the right questions and the right intentionality, you can start to find them. So the question is, how do you strengthen and trust your intuition? The first part, I've talked about this on the podcast extensively, and something I'm very, very bullish on is number one, is you have to quiet the noise. When you are surrounded by noise with too many inputs or radio stations on at a time, podcasts, courses, opinions, conferences, social media, TV shows, and where every moment of your day is filled with your brain or body being filled with noise, it drowns out your inner knowing. And one of my favorite quotes, as I am unapologetically in love with Jesus, and this quote was given to me when I was accused of being New Age and I was looking for God, is I had a very wise mentor say to me, your biggest challenge in life when it comes to your purpose and vision is you've never been quiet enough to hear God's whispers. And if we are consistently in the trap of always consuming, we're not creating the space to listen to ourselves and create a business from our inner knowing. And we end up becoming copy and paste versions of every single thing that we consume. So step number one is being intentional about quieting the noise. And that's as simple as starting with a couple of moments a day, setting an alarm in your phone. And when it goes off, taking 10 minutes and going outside and sitting in silence, or sitting in nature, or when you're driving in silence, or when you take a shower, sitting on the floor, which is my favorite thing to do, and just allowing myself to be, and to really allow myself to process through and start to listen to my own inner voice, which I consider the voice of God. That's number one. Number two is practicing daily gut checks. We all know what a gut check is, right? We all know when that message comes in and we open it, we're like, ooh, and it feels like somebody kicked us in the gut, or we're thinking about a situation and we see something happening and all of a sudden like a 10 alarm fire goes off in our gut. Those are gut checks that the world forces on us. But we can also intentionally tune into our bodies and we can utilize those gut checks throughout the day. And the really simple way to do this is when you're making decisions, when you're thinking about that piece of content you're putting out, or that podcast, or that offer, or that strategy, is asking yourself, does this feel heavy in my body or does this feel light? And you want to notice in your body where you feel expansion, right? When things feel like a heck yes to me, it's like my shoulders open up, my head lifts up, my face smiles, my demeanor changes, like doing this podcast, right? But then if I'm in a no and I'm about to go do something, my body will tend to shut down. My gut might tingle, my chest might feel heavy. I might notice that I'm short in breath. And so what we're noticing when we plug into our body, because our body is our best barometer and our best tool, is that yeses tend to feel expansive and open, and no's tend to feel constrictive or with contraction. And our body is the number one mechanism we have. Now, it doesn't mean that every single one of those yeses or no's are right. It does mean that it's an invitation to pay attention to them. So that's number two, is practicing gut checks. And number three is testing small and building self-trust. Testing small and building self-trust. And so the way that I think about this one is you want to start by following those small intuitive nudges and seeing what happens. And if you've listened to this podcast, you've heard me talk about this a ton, but here's a tangible example. I drive in the car in silence a lot. And I drop my son off at school, when I pick him up from school, when I'm running errands. I love silent time in the car, phone away, looking at nature. And I'll just be driving in the car and I'll have a thought, and the thought will be like, oh my God, Ashley. And I will think of our incredible CEO, Ashley. And I know I didn't plant that thought there. That's my intuition. That's my inner voice. So what I look at that is as an invitation to follow that nudge. So I'll open my phone and I'll send a text. Just like the other day, I was thinking about a dear friend of mine, and I haven't talked to him in 14 months. And it came up and I was like, oh my God. And then I had guilt and shame. And I'm like, what happened? How did this get so long? And I started like spiraling. And so then I just said, screw it. I opened my phone, I recorded a video, said, hey, I love you. Please forgive me for not following up. I've thought about you often, but this time I'm taking the nudge. And then we got on a phone call and we connected and we laughed and we aligned about life and business and shared some helpful things with each other. But those are two very, very small moments of intuitive nudges. Or if you're in a creative process and you're sitting there and you're just like sitting in the shower and you're like, God, I really want to share this. Well, amazing. When you get out, document it and share it. Because as you start by following and testing these intuitive nudges, there's no cost on the other side. There's no, the world is going to end. I'm going to lose my business. I'm going to sacrifice all this time, money, and energy. what you're going to do is you're going to start walking in the direction of listening to that voice, and it starts to build self-trust, and it starts to tune you into the frequency of your own intuition. And so even if you think about a marketing strategy, you're like, God, I'm like really torn between the two ways that I want to do this. You ask yourself with a gut check, like, which one feels excited? Like, which one, if I do it, can I bring the most amount of energy to? Which one, if I do it, can I bring the most amount of passion into? Which one, if I do it, am I going to love and enjoy doing, even if the results aren't ideal? Those are one of those moments where you can leverage your intuition and you can leverage your gut to be able to lean in and start to trust that voice and bring things into alignment. And I think the most neglected step and the most important step of this process is documentation or journaling and reflection. So one of the things that you can do when you're in this is when you get these intuitive hits, like, oh, I thought about texting Ashley, or I had this creative idea, document the idea. And then when you follow the nudge, document the outcome of the nudge, because it will start to build confidence and trust in that inner voice of yours, in that intuition of yours. But you'll also start to see that you have this innate wisdom, because in order for you to operate at your best, you have to feel aligned with what you're doing. And the more evidence that you can give yourself and stack in your favor, the more likely you are to follow that path more often and bring the results to fruition that you're trying to get. And there is a point of this where data is not thrown in the trash can. Intuition paired with data is the best strategy for alignment and scale. So data exists. I can follow an intuitive strategy for how I want to promote the event. And in doing so, realize that parts of it worked and felt good, but other parts didn't get a result. And I can look at data and make an adjustment to still be aligned and be excited, but try another strategy. And so you want to use data to confirm, but not override your intuition. You want to leverage the things that you have for reference points to help navigate forward, but not replace that gut feeling that you have. And so if you think about it, if you pair logic with your gut instinct, it is the ultimate decision-making formula. And what I have learned, and what I've helped literally countless amounts of people and my clients walk through, is that most of the time when we ignore the gut, when we ignore the intuition and we just follow the logic, we always end up right back where the gut would have taken us, except we lost time, money, energy, relationships, and then there's this big sticky mess to clean up. And so if your intuition says, hey, this offer that I'm about to sell doesn't feel good, but the data and the numbers say it's working, it's not to throw either in the trash. It's an invitation to look deeper. So open up the hood and say, what about the offer doesn't feel good? Well, are the clients getting results? Do I like selling it? Is it how I'm selling it? Is it that it's sacrificing too much of my time? Because that's where recipe modification comes in, which is actually how you scale an alignment. You allow yourself the space and the grace to adjust while still protecting the inputs and the outputs that are created. And as silly as this sounds, Apple with an iPhone is a tangible example, because all of us, or most of us, have iPhones. And if you have an Android, I still love you. I had one of those for a while too. But I have an iPhone 15 Pro Max. That's not the first iPhone that came out. The iPod came out before the iPhone, and the iPod came out, and then they got feedback and made adjustments, and then made it smaller, and they started with songs in your pocket, and then songs led to phone, and then phone led to apps, and then the size changed and the cameras changed. And all of those things were bringing into alignment, both on intuitive creative ideas that they had based on market feedback, but then how they felt they wanted to design it. And then it's iterate and iterate and iterate. Because there's a lot of times our gut will slow us down, and our gut's not saying abandon this. Our gut is saying tweak this, adjust this. Just like if you follow the same workout program, you'll end up getting bored, but you still want the results. So you make adjustments to make it exciting. You change your day, you change your habits, you change your food. That's you trusting your inner intuition to allow you to be in excitement, to be in process. It's going to give you the results that you're looking for. And I think the most important thing that you can do to blend intuition with strategy is to leverage data plus your gut, but make this intuitive practice a business practice. So when you're thinking about decisions, when you have a big day ahead of you, it's really, really easy to just get stuck on the field instead of scheduling quiet time before big decisions. Keith Cunningham talks about this in his book, The Road Less Stupid. And that book is incredible. But in every single chapter and every decision, the thing he talks about is having intentional thinking time, to where you just have a pen and a paper and you can process out your thoughts and you can start to listen to that inner voice. It's not go consume the world for confirmation bias. It's not go look for a podcast that says yes, or the coach that says yes, or the friend that says yes. It's look to myself and create the space to remove all of that noise and to ask myself, is this a yes? Small decisions happen quickly, but big decisions deserve some marination time. And I think the muscle here and the invitation that I would submit that everybody tries is trust that what feels right will lead to the best long-term results. Trust that what feels right will lead to the best long-term results. Because if you're anything like me, I've had millions of moments, what it feels like at this point, where I can reference back and say, I ignored my gut. It cost me 3 months or 6 months or $20,000 or $50,000 or a business deal. And ultimately, after the cost, I ended up right back to where my gut was saying yes. And so if I took that yes from my gut in the first place, and I took what felt like the world would say is the narrow path, but it felt right to me, I would have been there. I just would have been there faster and without the pain associated with taking those decisions. And so this conversation is one that I wish was talked about more. And I can't come through this laptop. I can't come through this camera. I can't even plug in like Neo in the Matrix and understand what your gut decisions are. You can. But this conversation is important because these are the conversations that I have. This is what I ask my friends when I'm listening to what they're sharing. Every heck yes that they've ever won, every big decision that they've ever won, everything that works in a way that brings fulfillment and joy plus the results of the business are these things where they just trusted their instinct. And they have these devout practices of leaning into that instinct, of leaning into their gut, of creating that space and drowning out the noise. And I shared this on a podcast like 400 episodes ago when I was talking about morning routines. And everybody looks at somebody's successful morning routine and they try to mimic it and copy it. And the thing that I noticed when I was studying very, very successful people's morning routines was that the higher level of success that they had, the more time that they spent alone in those routines, the more time they spent eliminating the noise of the world to be able to trust that inner wisdom, to be able to trust that intuition. And so I would love to make intuition not a woo-woo term. I would love to make intuition a celebrated term that really is our body's barometer of saying, we're in alignment. This feels good. This is a heck yes. When I think about this, I get expanded. I get excited. I open up. That doesn't mean fears aren't going to be there. It doesn't mean doubt's not going to be there. But I think everybody listening to this knows the big distinct difference between a like hell no in our gut and a heck yes in our gut. And when it's somewhere in the middle, it's digging deeper and finding which one feels the best. And so my invitation for you is this week is to make one business decision based purely on intuition and see what happens. Not a giant one, just a little one. A follow-up with a client. You thought about sending a message because it hit your heart and sending it. You're driving in the car and you think of somebody and you reach out for that text. You have an idea that you want to throw into your offer and you throw it in. Whatever that thing is, my invitation is for you to try it this week. Because I genuinely, genuinely believe, and I would plant my hill on this flag, I would plant my flag on this hill, that your intuition is your greatest business asset. And if you can practice and flex the muscle of trusting it, it will never lead you astray. And when you stack data on top of it, when you stack results on top of it, and you start to listen to that voice, I feel like that's alignment at the deepest level. And when I look at all the commonalities of the people that I help scale and my one-on-one clients, and even the most successful things that I've had in my life and in my business, it's because I was unapologetically aligned to what felt right in my heart, which gave me the energy, the capacity, and the confidence to see it through. And it didn't cost me any collateral damage. And I would love it if you took me on this journey with you. So whatever these business decisions are, whatever these intuitive hits are, I want you to share them with me. So either DM me or tag me on Instagram and be like, I just was driving in the car and I thought about this person. I reached out, we connected, and they asked me to come speak on their stage. I want to know, because I want to celebrate this with you, and to be witnessed in this is the big, big, big breakthrough. And so that's what I had to share today from this beautiful summer day in Montana that shouldn't be here because we should still have snow and it's all melted now. I want you to use space. I want you to use nature. I want you to start to tune out the noise of the world and start to tune in to your inner dialogue, to your inner radio, to your inner voice. I consider mine the voice of God. And I know that the more quiet time I spend with him, the more clarity that comes and the more confidence that comes to be able to execute that clarity. Not because a podcast told me to do it, not because a coach told me to do it. Now, do I learn frameworks? Do I learn consistency? Do I learn strategies from those coaches, from those podcasts, from those shows? 1000%. But I learn them and then I apply them to myself in a way that makes my intuition and my body feel expanded and being a heck yes. And so that's what I got today. And so I hope you have the most beautiful, beautiful of days. I hope God blesses you today, tomorrow, and the next day. And just remember that relationships will always beat algorithms. And the most important one is with yourself. And I'm going to add a moniker to this one, and also your inner intuition. And so I'll either see you in the next episode or you'll hear me in your earballs. But either way, we're out.